We are watching purchasing power erode in real time. If you're tracking the markets right now, you are seeing entropy in the system.
Total entropy. You're seeing the very definition of value become, well, fluid. It's political. It's arbitrary.
And to hedge against this, to really build the architecture for where we're going, we need to analyze the last time the global monetary system faced this level of existential threat.
We have to. We have to look at the moment where the system was effectively collapsing, and one specific mind was brought in to engineer a hard reset.
Right.
The strategic conclusion from all the intelligence we have is this. Isaac Newton decoded the laws of gravity for the cosmos, but then he realized that wealth itself required an immutable gravity.
A fixed standard.
A fixed standard to survive human madness.
And that is the mission for this deep dive. We're stepping away from Newton, the physicist, the guy with the apple and the calculus.
We're not talking about that Newton today.
No. We are focusing strictly on his role as the enforcer of monetary gravity. We're dissecting Newton's tenure as the warden of the Royal Mint.
And this is a high-stakes asset briefing. Because the problems Newton faced in the late 17th century are, structurally, almost identical to the macro problems we face today.
How so?
You had a currency being actively debased, a government draining resources for a massive war, the 9 Years' War, and a total collapse of trust in the physical medium of exchange.
Okay, so let's establish that problem state. It's 1696. The English monetary system is facing what we would call entropy of matter. The silver coins are literally vanishing.
They're being clipped. That's the technical term, but it's really just theft. I mean, theft on a national scale.
And what does that mean, clipped?
The coins were hammered silver, so they had these irregular shapes. People would just take shears, shave the edges off, and then melt those shavings down to sell the raw bullion.
And then put the smaller coin back into circulation.
Exactly. They put the diminished coin right back in.
So you have a coin that says 1 shilling, but structurally, it's only holding, what, 6 pence worth of silver?
If you were lucky. The data indicates that when Newton arrived, something like 10% of the silver coins in circulation were outright counterfeits, and the genuine ones were just massively underweight.
The currency was losing its physical integrity.
It's the 17th century version of hyperinflation. But instead of just printing more zeros, the money itself is physically shrinking.
So into this chaos steps Charles Montague, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's the one who brings Newton in.
He does. But Montague isn't thinking he's hiring some kind of turnaround CEO. He thinks he's giving an old academic friend a retirement package.
A cushy job.
He was offered as a sinecure, a title, a salary, a nice set of rooms in the Tower of London. The expectation was that Newton would just sign a few documents, sip some wine.
And work on his philosophy, a low-friction role.
But that is not what happens. And this is the real pivot point. Newton doesn't treat the Tower of London like a university common room.
No, he treats it like a laboratory.
He treated it like a failing industrial plant that needed a total top-to-bottom architectural overhaul. He initiated what we'd call a scientific purge.
I mean, you have to picture the Mint before Newton. It was run like a medieval guild, right?
Oh, completely. Drunk workers, loose hours, zero accountability. Newton saw all this and just saw inefficiency. He basically digitized the process in the 18th century sense of the word.
He brought in data. He brought in time motion studies before that was even a concept.
He standardized everything. He wanted to know exactly how much charcoal was being burned, how many horses were turning the mills, how many ounces of silver were moving per hour, real metrics.
And the scale of this project, this wasn't a small experiment. This was the Great Recoinage.
It was a massive industrial mobilization. Newton had to recall all the old, clipped, broken money and reissue new, standardized coins. We're talking about 6.8 million ounces in silver.
An incredible sum.
To get this done, he turned them into a 247 production line. He had over 500 men working. The furnaces were roaring day and night.
And he knew the tower couldn't handle that load by itself.
Right, and this is where he shows his operational genius. He established 5 provincial branch mints in Bristol, Chester, Exeter, Norwich, and York. He decentralized the production to increase the throughput.
But, and this is the key detail, he kept the standard centralized.
Precisely. Decentralized execution, centralized protocol. He sent a specific instruction to all the provincial officers that really defines his entire philosophy. He said, "Trust not the computations of a single clerk, nor any other eyes than your own."
Trust not. That's it right there. That's the seed of a trustless mindset.
He understood that human error and, human dishonesty was the one variable he had to eliminate. He was building a system where the physical reality of the coin was the only thing that mattered.
So he was moving from a system based on reputation to
Yeah.
a system based on verification.
But you can't secure a system just by making better coins.
Yeah.
You have to secure the network, and the network was under attack. Yes, it was. And now we have to talk about the war he fought on the streets of London against a man named William Chaloner.
William Chaloner.
If Newton is the architect, Chaloner is the systemic virus. He wasn't just some petty criminal. He was a systemic attacker.
What makes him systemic?
Well, Chaloner didn't just forge a few coins in a basement. He attacked the credibility of the mint itself. He published pamphlets accusing the mint officials of being incompetent. He tried to gaslight Parliament.
He even tried to infiltrate the mint.
He actually did. He tried to position himself as an expert advisor who could solve the counterfeiting problem, the very problem he was secretly causing.
Wow. So he's playing a psychological game, trying to become the security vendor for the vulnerability he created.
That's a perfect way to put it. He was betting that the academics at the mint were just too soft to catch him. He completely underestimated Newton.
So how does the author of the Principia handle a street-level operator like Chaloner?
He transforms. He becomes a detective, a monetary executioner. This is the part of the history that usually gets glossed over.
He didn't outsource this.
No, he physically went into the field himself. He went undercover to the taverns, the dive bars, the prison's new gate, the gatehouse.
Just imagine that scene. The most intelligent man in Europe, maybe wearing a disguise, sitting in a smoky alehouse in 1698, buying drinks for low-level criminals just to get information.
He was gathering intelligence. He conducted over 100 cross-examinations personally. He applied the scientific method to criminal justice.
And what did he find?
He realized that Chaloner's organization was loose. It was held together by greed, not loyalty. So he found the weak points. He flipped the wives and mistresses of Chaloner's confederates.
He leveraged the social network against the ringleader.
He built a watertight logic trap, deposition by deposition. It wasn't about hearsay. It was about constructing a proof of guilt that could not be refuted.
And the conclusion of that proof was fatal.
It was an absolute enforcement. Chaloner was convicted of high treason. In March of 1699, facing the gallows, Chaloner wrote this desperate letter to Newton.
What did it say?
Something like, "Oh dear sir, nobody can save me but you."
And Newton's response?
Silence. Total radio silence. Chaloner was executed at Tyburn.
We need to frame this correctly. This wasn't just cruelty. This was strategic.
Absolutely. Newton believed that if you violate the physical integrity of money, there must be a physical penalty.
He was protecting the standard. If the money is fake, society itself collapses.
It was a defense of the network protocol. He had to purge the attacker to restore confidence.
So he purges the attacker. But Newton's an engineer at heart. He wants a systemic fix. He wants to make the money harder to break so he doesn't have to chase criminals through taverns forever.
Which brings us to the technology of the milled edge.
This is physical encryption.
Right. Before Newton, coins were hammered, leaving those irregular edges we talked about. Newton fully implemented the screw press to create a perfect, machine-made edge with ridges or even lettering.
Decusit tutemem.
An ornament and a safeguard. That was the inscription on the rim.
And let's look at this through the lens of modern asset technology. This is basically an analog version of a hash function like SHA-256.
It functions in exactly the same way. Think about a blockchain, right? If you change one single bit of data in a block, the hash changes completely. It's immediately obvious to the entire network that the data has been tampered with.
And the milled edge did the exact same thing for physical metal.
If you clip the coin, you destroy the pattern.
And you can't put the pattern back. The verification is visual and instant. You don't need a scale to know if a coin has been clipped. You just look at the edge.
If the ridges are gone, the value is broken. Newton used physics and mechanics to enforce honesty. Today, Bitcoin uses thermodynamics and math. But the strategic objective is identical. Tamper evident value.
So he secures the edges, but there's another layer of verification that I found fascinating, the trial of the picks.
It sounds like a ritual from a fantasy novel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it was a very real, very high-stakes audit.
So what was it?
It was a judicial ceremony dating back to 1282, but Newton elevated it to a scientific validation protocol. The pix is just a box. As coins came off the production line, they would randomly sample them and lock them in this box.
And the key here is who checks them. Because if the government checks its own coins, that's just a conflict of interest. That's, trust me, bro, finance.
Exactly. The validators were the worshipful company of goldsmiths. These were private, independent auditors. This is so crucial. It was an external audit designed to build trust.
And the system was tested. There was a major crisis in 1710.
Oh, this is a great story of code versus consensus. In 1710, the goldsmiths ran the trial and found that Newton's coins were below standard. They claimed the gold content was too low.
The government must have been ready to blame Newton.
It would have been the end of his career. But Newton knew his process. He audited the audit. He demanded to see the trial plate, the benchmark piece of gold that the goldsmiths were using to compare against his coins.
He suspected the benchmark itself was wrong.
And he was right. He proved that the 1707 trial plate had been alloyed incorrectly. It had too much gold in it. It was too pure.
So when they compared his standard coins to this hyper-pure plate, his coins looked bad.
Of course they did. So he forced them to validate against the older, correct 1688 plate, and the math balanced perfectly.
That's incredible. He literally debugged the auditor's code.
Look at the structure here. The goldsmiths act as decentralized nodes. The trial plate acts as the consensus rules, the code. If the output doesn't match the code, the block is rejected.
Newton established a trustless verification protocol 300 years before Satoshi Nakamoto.
He was removing the human element and relying only on the chemical reality of the metal.
Which leads us to the biggest move of his career, the 1717 report. This is where he defines the universal constant.
Right, the context here is arbitrage. It's a bimetallic system, gold and silver. But the ratios were totally out of sync with the continent.
Walk us through the mechanics of that bleed.
In Europe, roughly 15 ounces of silver would buy you 1 ounce of gold. But in England, the government had set the ratio so that gold was overvalued.
So if you're a trader,
You take your silver, ship it to France, buy gold at the cheaper rate, bring the gold back to England, mint it into coins, and pocket the difference.
it was a perpetual money machine for traders, but it was draining the entire nation of its silver.
England was bleeding out its currency. So Newton did the math. He analyzed the ratios across Europe, China, and Japan. He realized he had to align the British peg with the global market reality.
So in his report on September 21st, 1717, he drops the hammer.
He sets a specific price. This is the red-hot number.
And that number is
£3, 17 gallons per ounce of gold.
£3, 17 shillings, 10.5 pence.
That number sounds archaic to us now, but that number became the gravitational constant of global finance for the next 200 years. By fixing that price and sticking to it, he inadvertently put Britain on the gold standard.
And that standard is what made the British pound the global reserve currency.
Because it wasn't arbitrary anymore. It was a claim on a specific, immutable weight of gold. It removed human whim from the value of money.
It's the same core principle as Bitcoin's 21 million supply cap.
It is in math we trust. Newton wanted to anchor the economy to something that politicians couldn't print and couldn't debase. He wanted money to behave like a planet-predictable, consistent, governed by law.
But, and here's the twist in our deep dive, Newton was a genius, but he was also human. And this is where the strategic asset architect has to look at the failure. Because the system worked, but the man failed.
The South Sea Bubble. This is the ultimate warning.
We have to talk about this trade because it's just painful. Newton, the man who runs the mint, the man who calculated the price of gold, gets completely caught up in a speculative mania.
In 1720, the South Sea Company stock is just skyrocketing. It's a classic bubble driven by rumors and credit. And Newton actually buys in early. He sells for a profit of £20,000.
Which is a massive amount of money then. Millions today.
A huge win. He should have walked away. He did the smart trade.
But he didn't.
He didn't. He sat there and he watched. He saw the stock keep going up. He saw people with half his IQ making double his returns. He saw his friends getting rich.
The herd animal took over.
The asset architect in his brain just shut down. He succumbed to FOMO, fear of missing out.
He bought back in.
He reinvested everything. At the absolute peak, around £700 to £950 a share, he went all in.
And then the crash.
The bubble burst. The stock went to nothing. He lost the £20,000 he'd made, plus all his original capital. In today's terms, we're talking about a loss of roughly $40 million. He was wiped out.
And that leads to that famous quote.
I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people.
That's just tragic. But from a strategic perspective, what is the lesson there? Why does this matter to the asset architect today?
The lesson is that even a gold standard isn't enough if you have human intervention and credit expansion. Newton fixed the price of gold, but he couldn't stop the mania of the South Sea Company. He couldn't stop the human element.
So this is the argument for clock-based systems.
Precisely. This is the bridge to Bitcoin. Newton tried to use physical gravity gold to restrain human madness. But gold is heavy, it's slow, and it's centralized in volts. It relies on people to manage it.
And people, even Isaac Newton, have emotions. They get greedy.
The failure wasn't in the math, it was in the biology. Newton failed to calculate human madness, and the only thing that can truly enforce scarcity against human emotion is a decentralized algorithm. A protocol that doesn't care if you have FOMO, a protocol that doesn't care who the king is.
So, in a way, Bitcoin is the finished version of Newton's work.
That is the conclusion. Newton was the 14th guardian. He was the first scientific monetarist. He moved money from the realm of politics to the realm of the laws of nature. He purged the attackers. He established the constants.
But he died haunted by greed.
He actually forbade anyone from even saying the word South Sea in his presence for the rest of his life.
He solved the universe, but he couldn't solve himself.
And Satoshi Nakamoto took that baton. Bitcoin inherits the physical scarcity that Newton loved, the mining, the work, but it removes the human administrator. It removes the Isaac Newton who might get FOMO.
So the answer he was looking for in 1717 wasn't in the mint, it was in the code.
It was always in the code. We just needed to move from physical gravity to digital gravity.
This has been a fascinating dissection. It's easy to just see dates and numbers, but when you realize that arguably the smartest man who ever lived lost a fortune because he couldn't control his own psychology, it really drives home why we need systems that protect us from ourselves.
And that's the final takeaway. Newton solved the secrets of the universe, but died haunted by human greed. Today, the answer he sought is finally submitted in code.
Reclaim your sovereignty. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Stay strategic.